Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. Let me unmute you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
I want to welcome Faith back on the screen. Hi, Faith. It's good to see you.
Hi. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Yes. And Seve, hi. Did you do away with John?
I'm sorry?
I said, did you do away? Oh, there's John.
Oh, there's John. Hi, John.
You're just in different locations.
Yes, I'm in Phoenix today.
Yeah. Well, welcome back, Seve. It's really nice to see you.
Thank you.
And a special welcome to my friend Galen from Yokoji. Welcome, Galen. And I think Tennessee, you probably met Galen the last time we were up there, if ever so briefly. And one of the beautiful things about this practice is that, Galen, I think we met each other maybe 4 months ago, maximum 6. Something like that, and it feels like he is a lifelong friend. You know, I mean, this instant connection and intimacy. Tennessee and Lori and I were having that conversation on the street just the other night as well, trying to figure out how long we knew each other, and we just decided it was infinity. So I'm doing a couple little tech adjustments here. So we've done some shifts and adjustments through the morning, as you've noticed. Jeff made a request for service, and sorry to hear that you lost someone close to you, Jeff. And happy to oblige with service. In this time of lockdown and quarantine and not meeting physically, we have not been doing the full service as usual, mainly because it just felt a little odd for Lori and me to be performing on a screen and everybody just watching and not being together. But then we have brought the Heart Sutra back a couple of times when Anyo, we did the memorial for Jitsudo. We brought that service back in. So Jeff, thank you for the suggestion, and thank you everybody for being flexible and, as we say in the Burrier household, flow the with go, going with the flow. There's a lot of that, I think, that's necessary right now. And Chalet is the one slated to do the talk today. And I'm sorry if this is going to feel like a bait and switch, but I'm going to let Chalet speak for us, because we've been in conversation yesterday afternoon and through the night, Lori, Chalet, and I, and decided we would revisit the talk this morning in light of all the events going on in Los Angeles, the nation, and the world. And Chalet, do you want to say a few words about where we ended up in that decision? Chalet? Chalet, can you hear me?
She's muted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
We had we met this morning on the phone to decide what we were going to do about our talk this morning, or my talk this morning. And it just didn't feel right. I had helicopters overhead until 2 a.m. It started again sometime after 6. There was looting of a friend's shop around the corner last night. They called us to check on things because their alarm company contacted them, and it was a motorcycle shop that the windows had been broken out of. There was a car accident right here on the corner. It just felt like there's so much in the air still lingering this morning that our focus for the Dharma talk might be better spent on other things that are on our minds, I guess, right now. So we decided to postpone it until perhaps next week, Dan. Is that what we decided?
I think so.
But yeah, it just felt like there were other things that were of priority in our brain right now and our focus right now to discuss in our Dharma talk.
Okay, and thank you, Shalay. And Shalay was the first one that raised this question. Lori and I were reluctant to take the center screen away from Shalay, the work that she's doing, the transformation she's undergone personally, the depth of her practice and how it's manifesting itself in this new business venture is so rich and deep that it's not out of alignment. But it did feel like we should take this time today to address head on some of the things that are going on. And so again, I ask you to be patient and thank you for going with the flow. We will get Shalay and her beautiful food and what she's intending to do for the people around her and humanity on the screen very soon. So that's one shift for this morning. So if anybody feels slighted and wants to sign off now, go for it. But know that we have Shalay's blessing too to do this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anybody want to say anything about that before we dive in?
I'm gonna leave partway through, so I just want to let you know it doesn't mean anything.
Are you sure?
And it doesn't mean anything might be, the ultimate in our practice. So John, I think that was you, right? Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for joining.
I may also actually just listen. I might tune in from another. I gotta prepare for my friend's service and stuff. So,
Okay.
but I'll see if I can tune in on my phone here. But I love you guys, and thank you for doing service this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for asking.
So what is going on? I know just even in Los Angeles is so large that we have different levels of remove from this. Lori and I were on a Zoom cocktail hour with some of our friends on Friday night, and most of them were on the West Side, and one group of them was in New York City. And Friday night was when helicopters and police cars started streaming into downtown, not far from where Tennessee lives, in that first big night of protests here in LA. Yesterday and into the evening, things intensified here. From the Pan America building through the Fairfax district to near Beverly Hills, there was a large march that seems to have started out entirely peaceful and ended in police cars being burned. We got a report from Nicholas, our son, who was at that rally, assured us that he was taking all measures to stay safe, but he's 26 years old, and he said, this may be different for you, but I have never seen this before. Yeah. And he said, I did not set anything on fire or do any damage, but it's quite something to be within a block of that going on. He's home safe and sound. As Shalay said, near her place overnight, there was a lot going on, a lot going down. As we all know, this was sparked by the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the circumstances surrounding that death. There was a shooting in Georgia some months ago with the 3 white men now having been charged with that death. And of course, going back through time, any number of these occurrences. In the car yesterday, Lori and I had a difficult moment together, not because of anything between us, but mainly because of my complete frustration and question about what is it that we are supposed to do? You know, because sitting there in a Zoom cocktail party with fairly affluent friends on a Friday night and saying, wait a minute, something's going down, and seeing very, you know, where's the connection, right? You know, for us, it's a tweet or a news report or a helicopter flying over, interrupting the tranquility of the group gathering. For other people, this is not life and death, but death very often. You know, Prajna Heart Zen Center was founded here in downtown LA and founded in, you know, within blocks of Skid Row. And we've had a lot of conversation about what exactly is it that we're going to do. And coming out of the last book club meeting on Tuesday night, a group has formed to really start looking at that. But there's a formation story that some of you have heard and some of you haven't. So the ones of you who have heard it again, here we go again. But it's about the manhole cover. And really our mandate, our demand of each other, that when there is an open manhole cover there in front of you on the street, you do not walk by and ignore it. Particularly when there's a torn shirt lying behind that manhole cover. You know, what is down there? Who is down there? Did someone fall down there? Do they need help? What is there in the darkness? This is an event that happened when we were meeting over at the community space, and one of the chrysalis workers came and up to us and said, I don't know what to do. There's an open manhole cover and there's a torn shirt beside the manhole cover. And Lori took charge and went and called the police and called down into the manhole cover and was there until somebody was on the scene and there was some assurance that somebody was going to find out what's going on. So that has become a driving story for us as a Zen center, is like, Philip, are your children nearby? You know, we don't effing walk by open manhole covers, right? What is down there? Who needs help? Okay. And sometimes when we look down that dark pit of the manhole cover, what we find is our shadow self. You know, the darker side of who we are, right? So I know I've got at least a couple people trained in shamanic practices. You know, the shadow is always present, and the shadow is a teacher as well. And what is this shadow that we're dealing with right now? What is this shadow that is rising up on the streets and causing all of this turmoil and violence? Well, it's got a word, you know, and that word is racism. And it's our job to really try to understand that. To really try to understand that and to find out where we fit in it and where it exists in us. Because if we don't start right here, no amount of out there is going to make a difference, because to the extent that this lives within us, either known or unknown to you, to the extent that this separation from other based on physical characteristics exists, for whatever reason, that's what's being manifested on the street. Some of you from Santa Monica Zen Center days will remember Ron Smotherman in this book, Winning Through Enlightenment. And I remembered a reading from this from many years ago. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's dense and a little bit turgid and hard to get at. But he does a chapter on racism. But basically, the point is the same point that we study in our koans. You know, there's no stick in the stick. There's no floor in the floor. There's no girl over there. There's no bell to stop, right?
Absolutely.
And the same could be said for racism. What is racism other than a concept? What is race other than a concept? Jeff and I don't look the same. Marcia and Art and I don't look the same. We're all white males. You know, I don't have a racial name for Jeff to create separateness from Jeff or from Art. So the point that Smotherman is making here is that race is a construct, race is a concept. Race is something that we believe in and believe exists, because if we just said there's no such thing as race, you know, that skin color is a human adaptation through evolution based on, you know, where certain people lived on the planet at certain points in time, and then our mobility has mixed all of that up. When Nick was a little boy, I was surfing every day. My skin was so dark, he thought I was black. He actually, when he was really young, thought that I was black. You know, now that comes from the innocence of youth, but it also points to some of the folly in this, because if he had stayed with that belief that I was black, then that would create me as of a different race. So, you know, Smotherman has this construct. He said, belief, you have a belief that race is some natural condition, and then a justification based on that belief that there's a natural division of mankind, humankind, based on that condition called race. And then a point of view that says, well, those people, that's naturally the way they are. And then we start segregating, and then mistreatment is allowed because somehow they are different than we. He is different than I. So, you know, the early koan, which some of you are directly working on, how do you stop the fighting across the river? You know, what river, what across are we talking about? Where does this arise? And we recently worked on the koan, who is that one? And you guys were great at uncovering that one is everyone, and that one is me, that there's no separation. And so if you start really through this practice holding this non-separation, then stopping the fighting across the river is as simply as not fighting. Dogen, going back to the 12th century, says to know the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be realized by the myriad or 10,000 things. This goes to the heart of the matter as well. We touched on this last week. When you sit with the word is, when you sit with your own belief in your own existence and what is, it starts making no sense. As John just said, it has no meaning. And this phrase, to be realized or actualized by the myriad things, what does that mean? It means that we don't bring them into existence, they bring us into existence. You know, I am here as a function of all of you and all of the world and all of the universe and all of the plants and all of the animals, and the interdependence and interconnection of all of those things, not because of some magical danness or some magical whiteness. And so it's easy to say, right? Well, let's all just be one and this disappears. And then we have a president. And I know that one of our vows, as a center is not to go into the politics. But we have a president tweeting that, if you go too far into the White House perimeter, that the vicious dogs and ominous weapons will be released. Now, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you voted for Trump or didn't vote for Trump. That is a direct threat of violence that harkens back to imagery and actual events of some of the worst moments of the civil rights movements. Vicious dogs. And that kind of behavior, oh, I hate that, right? I hate that. Why does that have to exist? And I hate that. And you'll hear some people, I hate the police. I hate this, I hate that. Eat the rich was chanted outside of Beverly Hills yesterday. I hate this. Martin Luther King said, I choose love over hate. Hate is a great burden to bear. So this is one to look at too when we find ourselves hating. What is hate? Because anger is pretty natural. Anger arises. Anger happens. Fear arises. A jaguar is in your living room. You're going to be afraid, and it's going to spur some adrenal-based reaction. Okay? Anger has to be transformed into hate. And it takes a lot of energy to create hate. So even when something is despicable, or something is wrong, or something is morally, ethically against our values and our beliefs, it is still our duty not to hate. As Martin Luther King said, I choose love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. And then I get caught in this, well, I'm some white guy living in a loft in the biscuit company lofts, where we have Teslas in the basement and charging stations and, a lot of the amenities of affluence. Who am I to say anything? And we can get caught in that too, and get caught in the I have no right and I don't know. And so I can't do anything, and we get paralyzed. I was teaching about, almost 4 years ago in Harlem in New York City, working with the Harlem Children's Zone, which is a wonderful group of people. You've probably heard me mention before, working to make sure that people without the same access that we have, and that's largely in Harlem, Latino and Black children and their families, have access to a great education from primary school all the way into college. And the Harlem Children's Zone leadership is a mixed and diverse leadership, but there is also a large percentage of Latino and Black leadership. And a lot of these people have far more education, far more skill, far more professional expertise than I could ever hope to attain in my years left. But I'm in a teaching position, and the teaching is about leadership and how to forge great bonds as a team and become a great leadership team. And in this particular curriculum, we look at great leaders throughout time and put them up as icons, right? Gandhi, Eleanor Roosevelt, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Martin Luther King. And one of these gentlemen challenged us right in the middle of the class and said, "Why Martin Luther King?" And we paused just like I did now. And so Martin Luther King was a great leader of the civil rights movement and accomplished great things and did it from a place of love and a place of heart. And he said, "It is so easy for you as a white person to put Martin Luther King up there. Where's Malcolm X?" More silence. Martin Luther King, he said, is easy for you as a white man because he preached nonviolence and it's safe for you. Now, I know this is controversial and I'm kind of putting it out there, but this is a real story of something that happened to me. And he said, "Do you know Malcolm X's story?" I said, "Well, yeah, generally I know his story. Have you read his biography?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I'm giving you an assignment. You go read that biography and then let's have this conversation again." And I did. I went and read the biography and it's really challenging. It's challenging to read because from Malcolm X's point of view, I am culpable because I am the system. Regardless of what I think I believe or what I say, I'm still the system. And I'm the system that allows a cop to kneel on somebody else's neck. That's hard to take. It's hard to come to grips with. It's hard to look down that manhole cover and see yourself in there, in the depths of this thing called racism. And my hope for us is that, I forget you, my hope for me is that this practice can help clean some of that up and help me see that so that I can find the right way to act. Shillelagh was going to speak on right livelihood today, and she's building her life around her belief about what is right and right thought and right action and right livelihood. What is that right action? And we're not going to point to any of you and say, "Go do this." But I do ask all of us to sit and to get to know the self so that we can forget the self, so that we can start feeling intimately connected with those who do not have the same advantages that we do. And so we can figure out what to do and how to do it. And I don't have that answer right now. I mean, maybe part of the answer is that our son is out there marching and that we're doing this, and maybe that's okay, and maybe it's not enough. The seventh vow, the seventh precept, I want to just make sure I say it right. I vow to realize self and others as one, and not elevate myself and blame others. There's a lot in there. I vow to realize myself and others as one. So that's what we've been talking about so far. And not elevate myself and blame others. So when we are looking at the protests turning to looting on the behalf of some people and turning to police cars being burned, from where we sit, how do we judge and how do we hold that? Should we judge? Do we have the right to judge? I mean, there are some rights and wrongs in this. The first vow is I vow to affirm all life and not to kill, right? You know, so there's that. But I ran onto this, was shared with me on social media. I'm not going, well, I can attest to the fact that it's there. Okay. And it was a post by someone. And I don't know what expertise they don't have, they do or don't have, but there's some interesting things in here. This is how to answer questions. A quick roundup of things to say to saltine Americans clutching their pearls over rioting and looting. Okay, so there's already some separation going on here and identifying some of us as saltine, you know, white cracker Americans clutching our pearls, right? But anyway, number one, rioting never solves anything. That's okay. So how do you respond when somebody says rioting never solves anyone? This person writes, guess what? This country was founded on rioting and looting. The colonists didn't politely ask to be independent. They started a war. Gaze through a brick. Black people rioted all over this country. Please let go of that falsehood and pick up a history book.
Or a brick.
Okay, so, you know, I'm not presenting this as a truth, but this is the kind of challenge I think we always need to be looking at. Rioting never solves anything, and this person just simply points out that the country was founded on rioting. What are you talking about? There was a revolution. There was a war started over perceived inequity, perceived misrepresentation or lack of representation. Doesn't sound much different. I could share this post. We're not going to go through it all. But it was interesting how it just took the things that I might have said or are being said and just turned them on their head. There was an editorial in the Los Angeles Times by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar saying, you know, if you want to understand the violence, understand decades, hundreds of years of disempowerment, right? You know, and again, I do not purport to understand all of this, but I do vow to go on this journey down the manhole cover. And that's what every one of the koans is about. It's what sitting zazen is about. Sometimes it seems like a simple practice. Sometimes it seems like an absurd practice. But this is it. This is it. If we are all one, now what? If not, now when? If not me, who? I think I'll stop there and open it up to comments, challenges, questions, and include Lori in the framing here.
Dan, I had, you know, I teach kindergarten remotely, and this is just it's such a beautiful thing to think about that one of my little girls, she had a flag behind her in her house. And I said, oh, Maggie, what is that flag? And she said, oh, Mrs. Edwards, I have to tell you, this flag tells everybody that we should love everyone. And I said, Maggie, she goes, don't you agree? Because we're into this, they have to agree. I said, oh, Maggie, I agree. So from the mouth of children, we should love everyone.
Simply
I mean, it was just a beautiful moment.
amazing.
There's a reason you and Max showed back up on the screen, Faith. Thank you, Faith.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And I know you wanted to hear Shalay talk about her business, so you'll have to join again. See, isn't that tricky?
No, I'm making my way back. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, come on.
That's Jeff. Lord.
I thought the comment about Martin Luther King being an easy person, or I mean, to relatively speaking, to turn into a hero because he's not threatening, is a really good point. And I should probably read that book.
Yeah, the autobiography by, I think it's Hale is the co-author of it, but yeah, it's a challenge to read. It's a challenge to look at it from that side, Tennessee. And you know, I mean, I'm not even putting out the point of view that Martin Luther King is some namby-pamby, you know, hero. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying from someone else's point of view, who is a PhD and a very accomplished Black man, he's like, you need to look at this. You need to understand this. If you're going to be out there teaching, you need to really be able to look at this from some different points of view. And the same gentleman, this was a week after the last presidential election. And he was on his way into the city from a suburb in his car. And somebody pulled up beside him wearing a MAGA hat and went,
Because now that's okay.
you know? So, anybody else?
I wonder
Galen?
if I might comment. Thanks. I think that I don't want to risk sounding like I think that racism is not important because it's a key issue, you know, but I think it's important to ask whether or not it's a root issue. And I think that in my experience, I've come to the conclusion that the reason we have the racial issues in this society, this country that we have, is because there are people who gain advantage because of that. And there are people who gain advantage from the situation we're in now. You know, there are people who are able to maintain their livelihoods based on the divisiveness that's happening in the country. You know, so when you go back to the, as you mentioned, Beverly Hills, you know, someone chanting "Eat the Rich," as abhorrent as cannibalism is, that's really not the message. You know, the message, I think, is that we have to remember that when these things happen to us, that there are people that are gaining from that, and it's been systemic, and it was systemic from the time that slavery took place, long before the country ever came about. It was systemic in the Reconstruction after the Civil War. You know, keeping this notion of difference between various groups is key to some people making their game, keeping up their front, making this thing happen. And to me, that's, you know, very important too. At the same time, sensitivity to not necessarily race, but to cultural differences is, you know, is key to maintaining peace. You know, I think that's all I have right now.
Well said. Thank you, Galen.
Thank you.
I hope you get to know the rest of the sangha and they get to know you better, because I know it will be a good relationship and time well spent. Thank you, Galen.
If I could say something, yeah, I mean, I really get that the source of these protests is unfortunately necessary. All this violence keeps repeating itself, and I cannot relate the times that I get pulled over. Certainly not because I'm black. In fact, the last several times I got pulled over, I got out of it because I was charming, and I'm sure that this face doesn't hurt. And I think it's really unfortunate that these protests start off peacefully, and then there's groups of bad actors who see an opportunity and then start looting, and then you've got in many cases across the country there were like bands of people who basically were on mission to go steal things from a store, and they would as if it was like a robbery, and then the unfortunate thing I think is the entire purpose of the protests then there's this backlash the other direction, so that now we'll have more police presence and the National Guard is coming in, and maybe that's necessary right now, but then what kind of laws are they going to pass in the midst of this that are going to take away more of our civil liberties? And to me, sort of building on what was just said, we have not atoned as a nation for the sins that we have that the nation has put on African American people from the time of slavery to the time of mass incarceration. And it's not only is it a missing, I feel like this is what's happening now is in part reaction to that there has been no formal reparations for any of this stuff, and that there has been no like kind of mutually recognized unity about that we are all people here in terms of our rights and in terms of how people are treated by police, etc. And I don't know how to create that. Certainly the president, making threats about vicious dogs and ominous weapons, and when the looting starts, the shooting starts, doesn't that just for sure just puts fuel on the fire and makes the angry people more angry and want to burn stuff. So I know for myself, and I think for everybody that's in this room, so to speak, we want everyone to recognize our interconnectedness. Otherwise, why would we even do this practice?
Right.
And then so I'm left with, well, what the heck can I do about it? And who am I to change that? And I think I just think for me personally, as a human, and also like as an artist, as a musician, as a entertainer type guy, it just calls forth the requirement that I do my best to communicate and speak up and speak out. Otherwise, I'm just watching this world, go by and devolve into what's happening right now. So I think that's what I'm left with, is that the call for me to express myself and share what love I have to share with people and my perspective is even greater, because otherwise we're just going to keep going down this cycle of violence that has backlash and relash, and it's just going to get, we'll just end up in more of a weird police state than we already are, and the issues of racism and the way that people are treated by other people who have guns is going to continue the way that it has. So
I think as a group, we need to, I'm not just talking about this group, but I mean, as a group of people, we need to actually atone. We need to create language around atonement. We're in a society that's created to sell products and to support large corporations. And the more separated we are from one another, and the less we create opportunities to bind ourselves together in how to live in a way that's appropriate for all people, the less we're able to do that, the better it is for corporations to continuously be in power and to have life be about what you're going to buy next. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a what's the name of that documentary by Noam Chomsky?
Requiem for America, or
Requiem
for the
Yeah.
American Dream.
Requiem for the American Dream is a great little primer on the way that he describes what we are at this time is thing. And no matter whether you buy his story or not, I mean, nobody's created this, and we can. It's not. We can't do it for personal gain. I mean, because everything's about personal gain in our lives. We're programmed toward personal gain. But what about if we gain as a population a new way of being because we write it together? You know, Betsy Ross and the flag. Well, you know, hey, it's time for us to build a new flag that's based on our experience of what our lives have shown us, and what our preference is based on our better selves.
It's the flag that Faith's student.
Oh.
The flag that Faith's student is talking about.
I mean, that's what artists are doing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, that's what every single artist, whether it's a you know, musician or somebody, you know, in a dusty studio somewhere, you know, we're actually we're trying to find those words, and we're trying to bring them together. And it's not about, you know, getting a big show for you personally. It's about getting a big show for all of us.
Yeah. Totally.
Nice.
I think to Jeff, to speak to your what am I left with? Where do I put this? And what you're talking about, Lauren, like we're creating every moment. Like it's not out there, it's in here. Like we're creating this.
Totally.
We're creating the next 5 seconds. We're all doing it.
Yeah, we're recreating what we've done before.
Yeah.
Or not.
Seeing ourselves as powerless. And I think in the individual sense, it's easy to say, well, where the hell do I put this? I don't know where to put this. It's too much. I can't take it. I don't know what to do with it. It's not mine. All that stuff. And, you know, yeah, our book club is meeting, and there's this palpable energy of like, well, like, look at how powerful and strong we are together. Look at how much we can do. Look at how even a small group of 8 or 10 people, so much more powerful than we are on our own. And that energy of I can't do anything, I'm powerless. It's out there. It's not inside me. It's from the past. I know, but it's like, no, we're actually creating it. We have the power, potential, etc. And that's what I'm finding in this community, is that potential, and hoping that we can, that, you know, starting on in a small scale, we can start to do our part to have some place to put it.
Let's bring all the voices in.
Yeah.
Seve, how are we doing?
Oh, she's muted.
Yeah, I can unmute you. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yes.
I'm doing well, and I'm Latin, I'm dark skin color, and don't feel discriminated against too, probably because whoever does it, I just don't pay attention. Actually, the only place I have been in the US for 30 years, and the only place that being discriminated against to affect me was in Paris in around 1995. Never went back there, never ever again. But here in this country, I know I'm listening because it's big what's happening, but at the same time, I'm thinking what Tennessee said, like, what can I do? How can I do something to change what's happening? Not only because of me, but because everybody else. They're killing Black people like animals.
I know.
It's really sad. It's really sad.
Gotta stop.
So, yes, that's what I'm left with. Like, what is it that I can do?
Yeah. And
What is it that I can do?
Yeah.
During difficult times like this. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you're relatively new to the group. It's nice to hear your voice.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I think that that essential question, what do I do? We need to sit with and for each of us understand that. And really, really dive deep into that. So thank you, Sevi. Philip, I'm gonna call in on you, dude.
Um, yeah, it was interesting when you were referencing the talk that you had on leadership. Before you mentioned it, I was like, oh, I wonder what about Malcolm X and Huey Lewis? You know, some of these controversial figures that they had their own sort of transformations that you know, at the end of Malcolm X's life, he was uh, on similar, having similar way of talking as Martin Luther King, which is interesting to me. And even his relationship to what race meant, it transformed a lot, you know, like when, and what transformed it for him was not arguing about it, right? What transformed it for Malcolm X was going to Mecca. Going to Mecca transformed his understanding of what race meant, and it let him be more at ease, and even be able to let go of some of the what would you say, dualistic ways that he used to talk about it. And I see that is part of the point of, you know, sitting. That is part of the point of joining a sangha. That is part of the point of being in meditation, is these things are totally real and they're not real at all. You know, race is something that if we want to, we have the option to go in the 10,000 ways, and the 10,000 ways that we can separate ourselves from each other, or we can see that those things are illusions. You know, we can see that those things are illusions, and that doesn't mean that we deny the fact that they're suffering. That doesn't mean that we deny that there are people that are being treated poorly based on those illusions. That it's that we, on one level, like, what do? We live in a way that reflects that those things don't mean that there are illusions, that we live that. You know, in my job, it's always very interesting because I teach Spanish, and I will have students that identify as Black and students that identify as white and Middle Eastern and Asian and Latino and Latina and Latinx and blah, 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 and and it's, you know, my students will ask me questions, and it will, a lot of times it will reflect wherever they are, you know, if they're from Central America, they'll be, Senor, are you from Central America? Or I heard your dad's from El Salvador. Is that true? Can you tell? And that, or if they're black, Senor, you look black to me. Are you black? Are you half black? Or what is it? Well, and my response is always like, what do you think? That, like, does it, and like really challenging them to look at how these things we like create. Like, these things are all things that we created. Yeah. And I think the point of practice is to be in this space where we really do walk that razor edge, where we know that they're not real. We know that we made them up. We know that, but we know that they are real. And like, that's for me the point of practice, you know. And even on this thing of, you know, atoning and, you know, looking at history, if we go back far enough, every single one of us has a slave owner. Every single one of us has a slave that is our ancestors. It doesn't matter if you're white or you're black or you're Asian. Every single one of us inside of ourselves has that person that fell down the manhole cover, that saved the person from the manhole cover, and that walked away and didn't even look and just, oh, somebody else's fault. Yeah. And we sit so that we bring them all together. We sit so that they're together, so that this is not a thing in myself that I ignore anymore.
Beautiful.
Well said.
Yeah, nicely said. And there's a psychology term for what you described when the kids are asking you that question too. It's called bid for connection. You know, it's like a bid for connection. We're all looking for connection. We're at 11:04, so two things. I do want to bring this to a close, but I also don't want to cut anybody off. So this is your chance. Anybody to, you know, raise your hand, speak up, and otherwise we'll go to the 4 vows. So Tall, Art, anything? Sure. Shalay, how do you feel about giving up your talk this morning now? Where is she?
Okay, there we go.
I don't know. I can't unmute you for some reason.
So sorry. I wasn't looking at the screen. No, I feel very good about having given up my talk this morning. I think this time was spent just the way it was supposed to be. And I'm really inspired by what everybody was saying, everybody's point of view. And I guess the only thing that I'm kind of left with again is it's always such a huge, ominous thing to embark on, I guess, this topic. And the only thing I come back to is just start at what's closest to you, which is my own community. And that's probably all that I can tackle myself. And those are my 2 cents, I guess, on the topic. It's just such a big topic. And that's what I'm left with, is just start in my own backyard.
Yeah, I agree.
Take a step and then take another step.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys, as always, every one of you is a teacher. We thank you for your teachings and your commitment, for joining us. Galen, thank you for joining us. Seve, thank you. It's great to see you. And Faith, so nice to have your smiling face back on the screen. And that's not to diminish, and Art, yeah. Well, Art's always here. I was going to say that's not to diminish those who are always here. Thank you so much. Love you all.
sentient beings are helpless. I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to